welcome everybody. You all know me, so I'll skip over my short introductions and just welcome you to our UIBC event. We had hoped to do this event in person. At one point, we were looking at doing a breakfast on location at Fave Bistro. Fortunately, with the spike in COVID numbers, we decided to move back to a virtual event. And so our next couple of events will probably be virtual until we see, what's going to happen with COVID numbers, and hopefully we can begin starting to see a reduction in the number. This event is, of course, homelessness and its impact on local small business, and the problem is fairly familiar to everybody in the Salt Lake City metro, and I think we're starting or have started to see the issue of homeless encampments and some of the homelessness issues starting to filter out to some of the surrounding communities in Sugar House and some of the other suburbs of Salt Lake City. So with that, we're excited to have our speakers, Allison Dupler, with the Community Engagement Coordinator with Salt Lake City's Homeless Engagement and Response Team, otherwise known as HART, and Dennis Faris, Business and Community Engagement Liaison with the Homeless Outreach Program at Volunteers of America here. And I'll let Bob Mack on our board kind of talk a little bit more about their bios. And Bob has been a board member for UIBC for a number of years now, and I'd love to have him tell you about his company and some of the challenges he's had with the issue of homelessness and encampments near his business, and then he will officially introduce our speakers for today. So Bob, take it away.
Good morning. Bob Mack, owner, Advanced Solutions Property Management and Utah Real Estate Professionals. We also have a maintenance company. I have an office that I've owned for about 2 years on 1360 South Main, which is where really most of this happened. I also have another office that we moved out of a few years ago on 1618 South Main. So I have quite a bit of experience on Main Street. And really what we do here is we coordinate, obviously, management of real property throughout the valley. And the biggest part of people coming and going from this facility is really the maintenance crews who come and go quite a bit. And then you have some walk-in business from owners and some tenants coming here for information and or to get instruction on how to make entry into units. A lot of what we do is online, obviously, with the COVID, but there's still a lot of coming and going with the maintenance guys, because at the end of the day, you've got to twist the wrench, can't do it through Zoom. So I went back and looked at the emails that I had, and it looks like this started for me in December, like the winter months of 2020. And what happened, and also the other key point here is my property is situated directly adjacent to Smith's Ballpark. So that's city property. And that was part of the issue that I was having, is just the location with the city directly owning the property next to us and how you would approach this. So in the winter months of 2020, there began a small encampment, and it was spread along the strip area in front of our business, my business, and then also extending far down the ballpark strip. So if you can imagine, on Main Street, there's a fire department on 13 South, then you have ballpark area, and then you have our offices. The encampment started slowly and then picked up speed and got to a point where there was probably, and Allison and Dennis can correct me on this, they would maybe have a better recollection. I think I probably remember pretty well also. There was probably, I don't want to overestimate, but maybe 15 to 30, 35 individuals living in and around, with a ton of traffic coming in and out. We had one special case where there was a guy that was running a bicycle chop shop out there, and everybody knew who he was, and the police knew who he was. Anyway, I started trying to figure out how to approach this, and really how it affected us is the safety of my staff. When, we had a physical altercation at one point when I had my guys out cleaning up the yard, and there was human waste issues happening, and there was, stuff being left in the front, and it was just really unsightly. And so we'd go out and start cleaning up, and then those altercations would start with some of the, not all the homeless individuals. Some of them were, very confrontational. Others just wanted to mind their own business and really didn't want to have anything to do with anybody. But once we got to the physical altercation level, then it was, and not so much physical, I'd say verbal altercation. There was never any physical contact, but verbal altercation with the individuals. We also had locked the door at that time to not let anybody in and out. And COVID had already forced us to lock the front doors, but we had the doors locked during that time anyway to keep individuals from coming in to ask to use a restroom. And like I say, really the biggest, and this is something that I don't think a lot of people understand, is when you see that encampment, I've learned quite a bit through that situation. And really what the first thoughts I have is, where is the restroom for these folks? Because I saw directly what happens when you have an encampment of 30 or 40 individuals. There's really nowhere for them to go. 2, there's a lot of drug use going on and you find a lot of needles, so the safety issue happens. And 3 is just, it just tugs at your heartstrings when you see folks living in that type of a situation. It's just not good for anybody. So I had some interactions with some of the neighbors. I don't know if anybody also knows, the Pride Center is located directly next to me, farther south than us. And then we have another owner that owns an old garage. Across the street, you have the Challenger schools. And I started talking to some of the neighbors, the Pride Center, the neighbors north of that, and they had given me a list of individuals to interact with, to kind of reach out to. And it turned out Allison was on that list and Dennis was on that list. And what I started doing is I decided that I was going to send them an update every day of the current status of the encampment. So I would go out, take photos of everything going on, and then I would send it to a list of, I was just looking at those emails this morning. There was probably 15 people on those emails at one point, but Dennis and Allison were always on there. And I will have to say that I was super impressed with Allison getting back to me. There's not a lot you can do. And this, one of the things these folks can talk about is what we can actually do. But there's, at the end of the day, people's hands are tied. You can't just go in and move them out automatically. But Allison was very good at getting back to me and saying, at least, the mayor's office hears me. They understand. I had the city councilman, I can't remember, I think they changed during that period. But anyway, I had the city council on those email strings, and obviously Dennis also. So that was really mine. And then I will have to say, really what changed is once they decided to take action on that encampment, the interesting thing that had happened is that they got the encampment moved, but the guy with the bicycle shop, he just moved down the street 2 or 3 buildings, and he was back in 2 days. And that was super, super frustrating. And the Salt Lake City police, who had been stopping by and asking me how things were going during that time, they ended up showing up in force with a dump truck. And I saw probably 20 or 25 police officers loading crap into the back of a dump truck. And I asked them where it was going. I guess it was going to evidence somewhere, but they were basically taking action on this individual as it was a criminal activity at that point, because they had asked him not to come back. He did. And so I would have to say the Salt Lake City Police Department really, really, I was really impressed with what they did during that time period. So that, and Allison would come by. I think, I can't remember, Dennis, if you had come by, but those were my 2 main contacts. And the other thing I learned in this situation was I didn't realize how much the Volunteers of America are involved in homeless situations. And I think everybody who's listening to this needs to that's one key point to take away, is that that's a very good organization and they're on the ground. And when you see a Volunteers of America vehicle next to a homeless encampment, they're doing good work, right? They're not just handing food out. They're not just giving them whatever. They're trying to get these folks to go to a better place, or at least, Dennis can expand on that, what they do. And then again, also Allison, she was coming out, she represents the local government, and she was, kind of guiding me through the process of what I could do. But that's kind of what happened to me. I'll introduce these folks. So you have Allison, Dennis on the call this morning, and they're going to kind of go through, what we can do, what's the best actions to take if this happens to a local business, and what you can do to help. And I think Dennis had also mentioned just a little while ago, like if anybody's got any ideas, because at the end of the day, this is not an easy nut to crack. So without further ado, I'll let those folks kind of chime in and talk to us about it.
All righty. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Let's see. Allison, do you have anything you wanted to start with specifically?
No, you can go ahead and take it away.
Fair enough. Let's see. Yeah, Bob pretty well explains it. Pretty good there. There was an encampment. Yes, I was definitely there on site quite often because with VOA, Allison and I work together closely in a team with her being inside the city, being able to coordinate city resources. Myself out to interact, myself and another case manager as well, to interact with all the sheltered and unsheltered neighbors so that we can try and figure out exactly what the problem is and help to mitigate it. It is complicated. There's a lot of different people, and each person has different needs, different concerns, different priorities. So yeah, but we saw that progress like Bob described with one individual with his bike shop. We certainly went through all of the how can we help steps, and then but it still eventually had to lead to, okay, now time's up and you really got to go. It's definitely not an easy task to get through all of those, to figure out what those needs are. And because there certainly isn't, like Bob said, there's no restrooms out there. There's no kitchen. So yeah, there's a lot of tough issues to deal with. But on the other hand, and especially last year being COVID, there were all of the available resources effectively closed down. So there were couldn't go to the 7-Eleven or the Maverick to use the restroom or use their hot water or their microwaves, that sort of thing. So that limited a lot of options. Also, a lot of people have been limited from being able to use libraries or rec centers as a space to self-resolve, either for computer access to be able to, apply for a job online or check their emails to follow up on getting their vital documents to get into their next apartment. So it left a lot of people out on the street, and we had to deal with that. So it's certainly ongoing. Bob mentioned that things have changed a lot recently. There have been a lot more police resources available and devoted to this effort. The city council recently improved funding for police department wages significantly, so that the Salt Lake City Police Department could be the best paid in the state. And that specifically because they were running out. Like with everyone, I'm actually really curious, quick straw poll on who's short on staff here. Is there anyone that's fully staffed right now? We've seen it certainly everywhere in every industry that people are short-staffed, and it hit the police force as well. So the Salt Lake City Police Department was down over 100 officers over the course of the last year. Part of that certainly was 3 different police forces opening up here in the Valley in the last year and a half. So they stole a lot of people, and then combined with just the whole scene around the workforce in general over the last year. It's been interesting. But with increasing wages dramatically, definitely paved the way to start to rectify that situation. So with that, we've got enough officers now to start taking a little bit more action, enforcing no camping laws, that sort of thing. But we still want to do so in a humane and compassionate way, because there aren't a lot of other options for the people in the streets. There are certainly some emergency shelters, some housing options, never enough. If everyone on the street right now were to stand up and say, please help me, I want a place tonight, we'd be in a really, really tough spot. There's not a whole lot we could do. There's just not enough beds available. So a lot of that leads into recent requests, specifically by the mayor, Shelter the Homeless, which is the organization that owns and maintains the homeless resource centers throughout the Valley. And then also Wayne Niederhauser, the state homeless policy director. They all came together in a press conference a couple of weeks ago to ask specifically for 300 more emergency shelter beds, so that we've got at least some sort of a stopgap measure in the event that people do need help immediately, as well as 450 units of available permanent supportive housing, something so that we can, sure, we get them into the shelter and get them stabilized and start working on paperwork. You know, it's to even apply for either a housing voucher or an apartment, or job, you need at least your vital documents, your social security card, your birth certificate, your ID. Wallets, of course, are the first thing stolen on the streets. It makes it really hard. And it's not like they have a filing cabinet somewhere in the woods. To hold all their documents, they've got to maintain the originals, and it's not easy to do. So oftentimes we have to replace them all too regularly. So yeah, doing things like that. And then with the additional units of permanent supportive housing, we can transition them into something there where they can learn through peer support help, how to be, frankly, a good neighbor. You know, like, you've got to learn the steps of, after having been out on the streets for quite a while, you either don't know or never quite learned how to, you know, take the trash out to the curb on Thursdays, or clean your bathroom every Saturday, or so it takes some effort, definitely, but an ongoing battle that we keep fighting. So let's see. I feel like I'm just rambling here. Any input, questions so far?
That's good information, Dennis. I'm wondering, you know, when you were talking about the documents, does lack of a mailing address affect their ability to get services and like Social Security, things like that? Is that a disconnect?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially over the last year with COVID, Social Security office was closed. You still can't just walk right in. The DWS, Department of Workforce Services with the state, closed, so you couldn't get birth certificates. IDs, to get a driver's license, you know, and a state ID, you had to go online to make the appointment. You had to put in a street address for them to mail a verification of the appointment to you. You had to have an email address so that they could communicate with you, and a cell number so that they communicate with you too. In that situation, if you're out on the street, you don't have any of those. You don't have access to the web to begin with, let alone mailing address or a cell phone. So yeah, it made it really difficult. And then they put in things too, which I understand why, to prevent fraud on their side and troubles, but the unintended consequences of this, they actually implemented, you couldn't use the same email or phone number for more than 3 driver's license appointments, DMV appointments at any one time. So our case managers that are working with 15 different clients couldn't use their own contact information to be able to set up that appointment. So we were scrambling. We were using everybody's email addresses and phone numbers, whoever we could find. It definitely made things extremely difficult. And then even when they do mail out the final copy, you may recall, anyone, that last time you renewed your driver's license, you've got to go in, they give you the paper copy, and then they mail you the permanent version. Well, no mailing address. So we do use our own office address. We've got a PO box specifically for that type of situation, but that's still limited by how often our case managers can interact with those particular clients. We have to be able to find them, get them either to the office to check the mail, or, you know, have the mail on us. The odds of all those things, all those stars aligning, get pretty slim. So it is difficult and time consuming. Yeah, it's really hard. Anyone else?
Hey, Doug, let me chime in real quick. I got a question, Dennis. One of the, you know, after having direct experience with that out in front of my facility for months at a time, my question is what % of the individuals you see out on the street have a mental or, you know, a drug issue or something that's really hard to fix? I almost think 100% of the individuals I was dealing with out there had some type of deeper issue that was forcing them to be in the situation that they were.
Okay. Any number that I give would be a wild guess. I can't actually, we just don't have the data to be able to really nail it down. I mean, it's by definition a transient population, so it's really difficult to connect with them on that level and find out exactly what those issues are. But most importantly, I think, is the question of which came first. Quite often, if someone is, for example, you get hurt at work, you're now stuck at home, you can't go to work, so you're not making your money, so you can't pay your bills, you're lose your housing, you may lose your vehicle, you're on the streets, you're still have a hurt back, and you're cold at night. At what point do you give in to, all right, how can I dull the pain, or not feel the cold so much, and start to either go down the road of drugs? Or does that type of trauma either impact or accentuate childhood traumas that previously existed, and creating more mental health trauma now? That combined with drug use, it's going to be different for everyone as far as what came first. And it's really tough. I don't want to say that it's because of drug use that they became homeless, because we do see, I would venture to guess more often that you became homeless first, because there are just a lot of things you got to deal with. And at some point you finally cave and got to get through the night. So that's a tough one. And then when it comes to resources, yeah, there's never enough. We have a system. Let's see, our legal penal system is set up in this county anyway, prior to this, that we had fairly well streamlined. A lot of people would be arrested, go to jail, be there for a few days, and then in their initial court date be given the option: do you want to stay in jail, wait for court to finish out and perhaps be sentenced, or would you rather go to rehab? Which is great. Gave them the option, allowed us to get people into, because addiction is a health problem rather than a criminal problem, and because we need to help them with that. But through COVID, suddenly the jail wasn't keeping anyone that wasn't a violent felon, so that they could help reduce the COVID numbers. We had, let's see, we're now in August, about 1 year ago today, there were roughly 250 people in the county jail that self-identified as homeless. Prior numbers to the year before, 650. So that left 400 people that self-identifying as homeless that would normally have been, frankly, sheltered in the jail, were now out on the streets. So these are why a lot of people like you, Bob, saw a lot of just random drug use happening out on the streets in front of your business. Again, unintended consequences. They were certainly meaning well, trying to reduce the number of COVID cases, but it still impacted everyone else. And without having those people being sheltered and that drug trade being removed from the streets, B, not having that funnel to guide it into the rehab, the substance use disorder beds, we suddenly had more people on the streets using more drugs, creating a blooming drug trade that then just kept piling on. More people, more drugs, more people using more drugs more often, and dealers were having a heyday. So that's why we also needed to contribute to PD resources to be able to help to impact that, because the drug trade certainly doesn't help anyone that we're trying to help either. So yeah, we had to kick into there. Where was I going with all this? Let's see. So yeah, we had a lot more people, a lot more impacted by drugs. As far as mental health goes, there is very little resources available. We do have the state hospital, for example, and that one, there's a few hundred beds for everyone in the state that may have issues. So, and we as a society have basically broken it down to, unless you are a immediate physical harm to yourself or others, then you're okay. So a lot of times we would get someone and take them away in the ambulance, get them to the hospital, and the hospital can sedate them, stabilize them. Okay, you guys are ready, and kick them to the streets. But with that as that sedation wears off, and then suddenly they're not stabilized anymore, we run into problems there too. It's a tough call, but it's also a very consistent, tough balance to make between personal liberties and, safety of others or comfort of others. Is it necessarily a personal safety issue if someone is in your front yard screaming at the voices in their head? Or is it just that, it makes you uneasy? We've got to be able to balance that, and there's no clear lines there to be drawn. I am seeing some questions over here in the chat. Let's see. Jason Woodland had a comment and a couple of questions. Jason, if you want to chime in, have at it.
Great, thank you. First of all, thank you for all the work you do in the community. It's an uphill battle, it seems, for sure. Back in my, let's say, punk rock days, back in high school, I wanted to understand the homeless situation on a granular level. So I went, I would take food out of my pantry and go downtown and just give it to people on the streets. I became friends with a gentleman named Hank, and I asked him, I said, hey, can I live with you for a couple of days? And he thought I was completely nuts, which I embrace. And I did, and I got to really learn him on a very deep level. We slept on a really nice piece of grass in the lower avenues, and it was really pleasant during the summertime. Anyway, talking to him, he said, I actually work back east a couple of months out of the year. And I said, well, because I asked him, I said, why are you homeless? As a kid, you can sort of ask those things, I think, a little bit more direct. And he said, honestly, I do it for the freedom. Now, of course, that's probably 0.5% of the total homeless population, I would assume. But it was really interesting to learn from him along those lines. He said, that there was a lot of people that were homeless, of course, of, a myriad of reasons. But he was also telling me something, and this is going to go into my next question really quick. He was talking about how different states will bus their homeless to other states and cities. And I remember hearing about Didi Corradini before the Olympics doing some of that with some of our homeless population, putting them on buses and just shipping them off to Las Vegas and so forth. And at another point, I'd spoken with a few people that were a little bit more in the know on this as well. And they said that there was sort of a bus war on the West Coast where you'd have Denver ship some of their homeless people to Salt Lake, and Salt Lake would try to ship them somewhere else. And it was almost like a chess game of shipping homeless people around, which, I mean, the ethics there obviously is a whole research paper in and of itself. But the thing that I was going to say is, fixing homeless at scale, I think if we're going to continue on the path that we're on is impossible. And I'm an eternal optimist. I don't say that word often. But I think the things that we really need to do, and this is all easier said than done, and I know there's not resources for it, but it's to go back to what Robert was talking about, is really understanding the demographics on a very granular scale. So who in the homeless population is actually from Utah and became homeless in Utah, who came outside of Utah and was homeless beforehand and just shipped over to Utah? Were they shipped here, so to speak, or did they come? Because I've also spoken with a few people downtown, even just in my more recent days, and I asked, hey, where are you from? And they're, oh, California, Denver, wherever. And I said, why did you choose Utah? Because we've got cold ass weather during the winter. Sorry for my language. But I thought, wow, if I was homeless, I'd go to San Diego. And they said, there's a ton of resources from the local religions. Now, of course, I know the LDS Church does magnificent work. The Catholic Church, the Jewish synagogues, they all do some wonderful work for the homeless. And so I'm just wondering if there's any way we could start on the process of building out a full database of demographics, so we actually understand who these people are, where they're coming from, and so forth. And then really detailing, did you spend time in the military? What was your childhood like? Did you just like to party and it went awry down the wrong path? Do you feel like you had mental mental health issues prior? Try to get an understanding there, and then that way, I think, is going to be the only way we could start the path of help. Because at this point, since we don't understand the demographics at all, we just say homeless, and that's like this monstrously broad stroke that encompasses everybody, we're never going to have the resources to allocate because we don't even know what to ask for from either wonderful nonprofits, religious institutions, governmental organizations, and so forth. Am I making sense there?
Absolutely. And if it makes you feel any better, we've done that.
Yeah. I was gonna say, sorry. I could put in the chat, Dennis, the link to the most recent from the National Ice and Homelessness kind of demographics. So I'll do that now while you talk, because it sounds like a comment.
What you're describing is effectively a by name list. So we do have and just as it sounds, it is a list of people by their name and what their specific issues are, any contacts they've had with service providers, so that we have a state homeless management information system, HIMIS, that everyone inputs their data into, saying, hey, I interacted with this person, giving them food or water, or helping them move towards housing by getting vital documents, whatever the issue is, employment counseling, whatever. We do, let's see, we have an annual point in time count. That one done normally in the last week of January. And this past year, of course, with COVID was a more interesting process than previously. So we kind of did a whole lot of guesstimating. So with that, the numbers are a tad wonky, much like baseball. It's always going to have an asterisk this year on those numbers. But also to that end, we saw that we don't have full faith in those numbers from January. So we're actually doing a secondary pit count coming up in the next few weeks. And that one to just, again, be able to do a more in-person contact with everybody and this, by the way, a pit count consists of, we literally go out at 3 a.m. and start finding camps, anyone, everywhere throughout the county, everywhere, looking everywhere we can and doing a survey, exactly all those questions you asked, get all those demographics. Have you ever served in the military? Have you ever stayed in a shelter? Or where was the last zip code that you were housed in? So I can tell you that over 90% of the people on the street that the VOA Homeless Outreach Program interacts with were last permanently housed within Utah. Over 95% of them, over 90% within Salt Lake County, 95% of them within Utah. And so that leaves very few of people that are coming from outside of Utah. And oftentimes, just within this group of however many we've got here, how many of us were born here? A lot of us have come from different places and for different reasons, whether it was you came for a job and it's great that your job worked out. Sometimes it doesn't. So we've definitely run into people that, I came here because I was out of work where I was and had a lead on a new job, got here and it fell through. That can happen. So without going down the road of where do you draw that line of, are you from here and do you deserve help? Instead, we're just going with, if you are here, then you do deserve some help. You also asked about busing. Let's see. You're right. We did for the Olympics. It was horrible. We bussed people anywhere we could. Everyone everywhere saw that it was just a shell game. We were all shifting them back and forth and around, and it was just costing. The only people winning were Greyhound, paying for bus tickets. So instead, we do have a diversion system that we still implement regularly. So anytime someone enters one of the resource centers, they are going to sit down with one of the counselors, and they're going through a full survey of, is there anyone in this world that might be concerned that you are entering a homeless shelter tonight? If so, can we call that person? Is there anyone anywhere that we can talk to that we might be able to get you some sort of family or friend health or support network that we can plug you into? If there is something, then we'll contact that person. We'll do some due diligence with that person, with that group, and make sure that this is going to be a long-term healthy situation for that person. We have had, you call up someone, maybe my daughter would be worried about it. So, okay, we call up the daughter and sure, she can come stay with me. But then as you get a few questions in, she can stay with me for a week or two, but after that, I'm going to kick her back out again. that's not good enough. We need to know that there's going to be a long-term support system there in place, because we can do better here in a resource center than shipping them elsewhere and making it someone else's problem. But if in the event that, oh yes, I've been looking for this relative for months or years, and I desperately want to help, we've got a place here, we've got an entire network. Okay, then what do we have to do? So we'll spend some time and do the due diligence there, make sure that it's an appropriate place to send them, and get them that bus ticket, because that can help plug them into available family or friend support networks that can frankly do a lot of good that we as professionals can't necessarily provide. So there is the option, but we want to make sure it's the best option before we take that. Let's see. And then you also mentioned that you went out, and because you were young and foolish, that you could just have a conversation with them. But I'll tell you what, they're just people. It's a sure bet that someone in this group is an asshole at one point or in time, that we are all just people, and everybody has a different relationship with other people around them. Oftentimes you can just talk with them, even if they are suffering from either mental or drug addiction issues. Just having a conversation with them, they understand that they're causing issues where they are and what they're doing. Now, they may have other things impacting their abilities to deal with those issues, but oftentimes, and I highly recommend it, just have a conversation with them first. Now, I also want to caution, of course, don't put yourself in any danger. If you ever do feel threatened in any way, take other steps. But I really appreciate if anybody would just talk to them. Oftentimes, if you offer trash bags, for example, they understand that it's a mess around them, but they don't have a regular trash pickup. The rest of us, imagine if you took your kitchen trash can, and instead of being able to throw it outside on the curb on your trash can for the city to pick up each week, then instead you had no place to put it. I think this being America, we all produce quite a bit of trash, so it's tough to deal with on any given moment. But if you tend to give them trash bags, then they will at least help with that. I don't know. Did that help, Jason? Did I miss anything?
Oh, that was awesome.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. And I just want to add just a little more context to what I put in the chat. The first link is just like Dennis said, the point in time count that we, that is a nationwide thing. And that link, gives kind of a snapshot of homelessness throughout the country, depending on what state you click on. And that was done. Those numbers reflect the point in time count from January of 2020. So right before the pandemic hit. So we're still waiting to see the numbers from last year. But like Dennis said, it's going to be they're going to kind of be a wash just because of the way we had to do it. And then just a plug, like Dennis said, we're doing a fall point in time count September 10th. And so it's coming up. If you'd like to volunteer, you can click on that link. I know Dennis has done it and I have too. I hate to say wonderful, because it's also very sobering to see how many people are out living in cars and things, especially when we do it in January and it's cold. But it's a good experience just to kind of have those conversations. Like Dennis said, they are people, individuals experiencing homelessness. We all are people. We have so many similarities, and to just hear some of those stories and get a better sense of what folks on the streets are up against, as well as what we as a city and a state are up against. It's a really great experience. And I mean, it's always fun to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go drive around Salt Lake County. So if you'd like to volunteer, go ahead, feel free to click on that link and you can volunteer there.
Absolutely. We do need lots of eyeballs out there. Janet had also asked, have you seen a benefit from the mental health triage centers that were funded this year? Yes, they have. The one in Davis County has been operating for, I think a year and a half or so now. It has shown a definite impact. The one in Salt Lake County has been funded, but they've only just now broken ground on it last month before. So it's still going to be a year or two before it's constructed. I think it's going to be at least late 2022 before it's constructed and operational. And then I don't know if you're familiar with what she's talking about, generally called a receiving center. With those, it basically some place to take a person who is suffering in that moment. If you are drunk or high or having a mental episode, they can, rather than taking you to jail and burdening everyone with doing all the paperwork, maybe you just need a place to calm down. So here's a room, a bed, just sit, chill, relax, and we'll talk to you in an hour or two and see how things come out. See if there's something really basic that we can get you to help calm things down, and or let all the substances wear off, whatever we need to do. And so it gives us kind of a 24 to 72 hour window to be able to evaluate the situation and deal with issues using the fewest resources necessary. Because oftentimes somebody just was having a bad day and needs a chance to calm down. So we can give them a nice quiet place to do that. So yeah, we are very excited to see that receiving center come online, hopefully late next year, but construction timelines being what they are, it'll probably be 2023 before it actually happens. And then of course, staffing, as we know, is a big issue any day, every day. So did that answer your question, Janet?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
There's something very specifically that the business owner community, especially in the downtown area that is more highly impacted, can do?
Keep us aware of what's happening. We don't have eyeballs everywhere. If you are downtown, within Salt Lake City, certainly myself or Allison are fantastic contacts. There is also an app that everyone can download called SLC Mobile. Reports to Salt Lake City, whatever the issue is. If it's a concern regarding homelessness, but thankfully you can also report that my street light's out, there's potholes, graffiti, just about anything. You can pay your water bill. Just about anything you could want to report to the city, you can do so from that app very easily. And it's a great resource. And then we get that list of, okay, here's the issues, here's where the camps are. We do have a meeting each Thursday morning where we look at that list. Here's all the reported camps, what's happening in those spaces. VOA, you guys are out talking to each one of these campers, what does this spot look like and how big a priority is it? What issues are happening there, so that we can prioritize each of those camps for some sort of a response. Now, whether it's just, we can send out Advantage Services, which is a company that that the city contracts with to clean up public spaces, and which, by the way, employs either currently or immediately previously people experiencing homelessness. So it's a great transition there too. And they can go out and, just clean up around the area, whether it's bio waste. They have power washers and all the right training and equipment to be able to clean bio waste. We do have funding currently from the city council, thankfully, to clean bio waste on either public or private land currently within Salt Lake City. So that's a bonus.
We do report the bio waste, so it does often take one business day. So just
It'll take us a minute to get around to it, but to schedule everybody. Let's see. Or if it turns out that, hey, there is a quickly growing crowd becoming violent, that sort of thing, then we need to know about that too, so that we can make it a higher priority and engage police resources as well. So yeah, biggest thing is just letting us know what's happening, what you're seeing. Just like Bob did, we were getting daily emails from Bob on here's today's pictures, here's what I saw last night. And please don't think that you were bugging us. It was so helpful to be able to see that transition as things progressed. And for, frankly, everyone in the administration to be able to see it too. It did take us longer than we would have liked to be able to mitigate those issues due to a variety of other concerns at the time. But it definitely helps us to just know what's happening everywhere so that we can prioritize accordingly. So yeah, I think reporting is the biggest thing, just letting us know what's happening.
Yeah, I will say for a fact that I never felt like I was bothering you guys. I always got a little email back saying, hey, Bob, thanks for the update. I'm quite sure that I wasn't the only one sending emails in. So I really appreciated just the little reply that said, "Thanks, Bob. We appreciate the update." There was always a response somewhere. So I never felt like I was bothering you guys. So that was awesome.
Allison's much better at that than I am.
And yeah, and we, like Dennis said, we really do appreciate those updates. And I appreciated Bob too, knowing that, yeah, thanks for the update. And I'm sorry we can't do anything about it today, but we do appreciate those updates. And yeah, he wasn't the only one in the city giving us updates. So please feel free to give us those. And Dennis and I too like to take field trips and visit different businesses and see what's going on. So we're always happy to come out and talk with you at your business as well.
Absolutely. Certainly appreciate any patience and compassion you can offer. Bear with us. It does take a minute sometimes with the glacial pace of government to deal with issues. But just keep in mind too that we've got the entire city to deal with, and there are oftentimes worse problems elsewhere. But we'll get there, I promise.
I think a lot of people may feel like, that it's not that it's hopeless, but that there's a certain amount of futility in wondering or thinking, how much can the people be helped? Will the encampments ever leave my area? And is there anything that can be done about it? And what would your message on that be? It sounds like the message is that, yeah, there is something that can be done. We can help provide services, get, services for these people, get them headed in the right direction. And it's not just shifting them to some other location where it becomes a problem for another business, right? It is actually creating a net positive result in that they're getting, hopefully, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. That's definitely our goal, but we also have to recognize that there are not enough resources to get a net positive goal often enough. However, we also have to recognize that having the encampments in a single space for a lengthy amount of time negatively impacts all of you and all of your businesses, and that's not fair either. So it's a constant balancing act that, Bob mentioned that a lot of camps have been moved around a lot more often lately, which business owners definitely appreciate. But I'll tell you what, my case managers hate it, because as they're trying to reach out there and connect with clients out on the street, I had a case manager tell me a week before last, of 10 clients on his caseload at the moment, 8 of them had been moved more than once within the last week. And as a result, he has had clients miss 6 appointments with apartment managers to do an interview to get into a new apartment. They had a voucher in hand. They're ready to sign the paperwork. We just can't find them to complete the transaction because they got moved and then moved again. And they don't have a cell phone to be able to call us and let us know where they are. So yeah, it's tough sometimes, but it's also can be negatively impacting the neighboring businesses or residents. So we've got to balance that. As far as long-term, yeah, we need a lot more resources. That's why the big push for the 300 new emergency shelter beds and 450 permanent supportive housing units immediately, with more ongoing, so that we have some options there, a little bit of a buffer built in there. As far as solving the problem completely, I mean, it's going to take either a lot more resources. I don't know. I mean, we haven't, throughout the history of the world, we haven't solved crime. We still have a police department. These things do continue to happen. And as our population increases in this valley, which it certainly has significantly, based on the new census numbers, we've got, along with that, there are more people impacted by homelessness. Combine that with a reduced investment in resources over the last 40 years, we're in a tough spot, and you can see that just looking out on the streets. Since the Great Depression, governments had invested in building affordable housing leading up to roughly the 80s. At that time, there was a significant reduction in affordable housing funding, construction, and with that, we've got fewer and fewer units available to be able to, that someone can afford. We can definitely see a direct correlation between the rising cost of housing with the rising numbers of people experiencing homelessness. And certainly anyone here can attest that the cost of housing in this valley is going through the roof right now. So that does impact people. And so, yeah, we need a lot more housing, frankly, just a lot more housing in general for everyone, because even if we were to open up every vacant luxury apartment right now for someone to stay in, there's still not enough units available. So there's that. Let's see. Janet mentioned a homeless coalition that meets monthly. Janet, are you talking about the Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness by chance?
No, I'm talking about, I'm traveling right now, so I haven't got my things. Just Tara and Francesca run the housing.
Oh, yeah. That's the Utah Housing Coalition.
Yeah, the Utah Housing Coalition. Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, it's all about affordable housing and,
Yep.
and bringing affordable housing to and advocating for affordable housing. So it's a great coalition that might benefit from a business, leader on that coalition.
Absolutely. Yeah, Tara would definitely appreciate it. Tara Rollins runs the Utah Housing Coalition. It is an organization devoted to lobbying activities and policy to encourage affordable housing availability. So yeah, they work hard there. There is the one I mentioned, the Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness, and that brings together all of the service providers in the valley, pretty much. Voluntary, of course, so not everybody participates, but the vast majority, where they're all coming together, including the Housing Coalition, to talk about all the services that are provided at every step and to figure out what the best practices are, how they can better work together. So it's governmental as well as nonprofits, volunteer organizations, just anyone and everyone coming together saying, hey, well, we can add this piece to the pie. We can coordinate with this. We can help facilitate that. We should all promote this message so that we can get the point across to everyone, whatever it takes. So that one definitely also worth engaging in if anyone has any questions there. Allison just put the Coalition and Homelessness link in the chat as well. So yeah, if you've got any more, if you want to know the down and dirty of how and who and where any of these things are, any of the services are provided, or how best to provide them, and the roadblocks that we run into on a regular basis, then yeah, these meetings, they've got 8 overarching task groups, and then amongst below those various subtask groups devoted to more and more specific issues. Things like coordinated entry. How do you determine who would be best prioritized for an available shelter bed that night? Those types of processes. So it can get very, very nitty gritty, but as they're looking for all the help they can get and any input that they can get to help add to the conversation. So yeah, it's open to everyone. Please feel free to jump in there.
Any other questions for Dennis or Allison? Feel free to unmute if you do have some. Ask away.
Then go.
Got lots of ideas and you've talked a lot about things, but some other states, Texas, I think, is one that they have doctors who specifically work with the homeless and go out in the field, and it's a field of medicine that they practice specifically to do this. And I'm just wondering on that kind of count, could, be great if DWS, with, they've got laptops, they've got this, if they could just go out and do that documentation.
Damn right.
Right there and then, wouldn't that be awesome? Then you don't have all those steps in the way, because it's all those steps that they just can't do. I mean, it's hard for me, and I have a computer, but if you don't have access.
I agree completely. In the case of DWS and DMV, again, unintended consequences. They put in policies into effect that, none of their employees can go out of the office. No one can travel in the field. can't take the computers out, that sort of thing, because they were looking to prevent COVID. So we wanted to reduce the number of personal interactions. However, in this instance, there's no other way to handle that transaction. So yes, it was definitely a problem. We did eventually, due to a lot of Allison's great legwork, connect with, we made inroads with DMV. We have a contact now that we can call them, get a same day appointment, to be able to get someone in generally to move things forward. Allison worked hard with the city, put together the community commitment program. And it's basically a traveling resource fair, hitting areas very near camps, and bringing to bear, setting up booths with whatever resources we can get, one of which being, DWS, DMV, anything to get those vital documents, bring them out there. A big one has been kayak court, actually, which I'm going to let Allison talk about it. Actually, I don't know why I'm telling you. I'll let her tell you about that one. That's a great one.
You can totally talk, but yeah, no, you're right, Janet. We are working and we're continuing to work through the community commitment program to bring resources directly to folks who are living in encampments. Actually, I had a meeting last week with DWS who were trying to bring even more of their folks there, and as well as Dennis had mentioned, HEMIS, to get people plugged into that resource. Unfortunately, like Dennis had talked about before too, with staffing shortages, people maybe can't take the time to come out and sit under a tent for 3 hours. I think it's a lot of fun to sit under a tent for 3 hours, but or now that the Delta variant has gone up, some folks are just not willing to be out and interacting with people, which I totally respect. So we are, excuse me, trying to mitigate that with some of the DWS and folks that you had mentioned. But yeah, the city, through the community commitment program, we're doing a few things. One, Dennis mentioned the traveling resource fairs. We do that once a month and bring together a variety of resource providers, including the health department comes out and gives COVID vaccines. We've had quite a bit of success with that, excuse me, and other service providers. And we found, just like any of us, excuse me, sometimes we have to decide to make that change. And even if we're there, we have to be ready to accept those resources. So we're going to continue to keep going out every month doing that. And one of our greatest partners in the resource fairs that then also helped us develop Kayak Court is the Salt Lake City Justice Courts. Individuals who are homeless can rack up quite a few citations. Like Judge Robinson says, if you don't have a home and you open a letter with a public intoxication charge, if you don't have a home and you have to go to the restroom and you have to just go wherever, you can get a public indecency charge. So we try to address those minor warrants that are barriers to housing and services at resource fairs. And then also, I'm getting to Kayak Court. We've now 4 times done Kayak Court where we hop in canoes and on green bikes. The Jordan River Commission has been a great partner, as well as green bikes. And we go down Jordan River and stop at the different encampments along the river to address some of those same warrants that folks have. We just did it this past Friday and heard over 20 cases. I think in our four attempts at Kayak Court, we've resolved or rescheduled court cases, over 60 court cases. And so it's been, huge in that so many of these individuals don't have transportation to get to the courthouse, or like Dennis said, they don't have a phone or something like that. So you may even forget your appointment. I mean, I live in a house and I sometimes forget what day it is and what appointments I have. And if I'm living in a tent and worried about 100 other things, it's hard to remember to get to court. As well as, when you go to court, you feel like you have to dress up. And again, if you're living in a tent, you may not have a lot of clothes to dress up in. So Kayak Court has really broken down those barriers and made it a lot more accessible. When the judge rolls up in a canoe with a bucket hat and t-shirt on, it's a much less scary thing than showing up to a courtroom with someone in a robe. So we've been really experimenting with that, and we're also working on how do we meaningfully sentence folks to things that are lead to self-sufficiency. So we're working on a partnership with Trails and Natural Lands to help the individuals who we see in kayak court then turn around and become stewards of the river and do some community service along the river. Because just like all of us contribute to the degradation of the Jordan River through a variety of ways, we can be part of the solution, just like those who are homeless are. And we're also trying to make some connections, community connections, where we can also kind of meaningfully sentence people to community service that can lead to future employment opportunities. So it's an ongoing task, but it's something I enjoy trying to put together, and something that we think will just continue to help the individuals in the way that they need to. Sorry, I get really excited about kayak court and resource fairs, so I could just keep talking. But yeah, so that's one of the things the city is doing to try to mitigate a lot of the different concerns.
It's been great to see the judge will pull up to the bank in the kayak and figure out what the case is as the client's there on the bank. Got people there with iPads on both sides. You've got they can hold the initial hearing as another canoe comes up with the defense lawyer, and the judge can pull back as they have a little defense conference there and figure out what they're going to do, how they're going to plead, and with their client and everything. Judge comes back in, and it's awesome to see it.
Out last time. It's been it's been fun, and we've gotten a lot of great community support as well, with people donating breakfast and things that we can hand out, and hygiene kits.
Because it's certainly tough, even just to go, even if you did know what day it was and wanted to go to court, that means that you have to leave your camp, and that means leaving everything that you own completely exposed and open for others to steal. So that can be a tough call. Do I go to court and take care of this issue, or do I protect my entire life? Yeah, oftentimes you stay at home.
Yeah,
So.
and it's been great too with the resource fairs and kayak court. And I understand this, a lot of individuals experiencing homelessness don't trust the government, but they've started, expecting and asking for us to come down, and we've built that trust. And so we're hoping that that trust building will allow us to continue to do more things and open doors for individuals experiencing homelessness. And yeah, it's definitely like I said, a community effort we couldn't do without Volunteers of America and Jordan River Commission. And even, there's a lot of private attorneys who volunteer to come out. We had an individual this last Friday who took the day off of work to come out and help us at kayak court. So it's been a lot of fun to see. And I have to say too, it was this all kayak court came about because of the Salt Lake City Justice Courts and Judge Robinson and Kim Russo, a social worker who just kayaked down the Jordan River for fun and saw the need, and so we figured out how to put it together.
Allison brings up a good point too, with as far as building trust. Bob mentioned that if you see a VOA car next to a camp, they're not just giving them food and enabling them to stay out there. Oftentimes it's that act of, what do you need to survive today so that you can trust me to come back tomorrow and help you with the next step. So if it's as easy as here's some food and water so that you're hydrated and healthy, so that tomorrow we can talk about your vital documents, and then housing and employment, and start taking all of those steps. It can certainly take time to build that trust, but there's no question that, if we walk into a camp and apparently my physical stature gets me pegged as a cop a lot, but I can walk into a camp and no, I'm VOA outreach. Oh, VOA. Okay, then let's talk. We have built up a lot of trust over the years, but it has taken time, and it's still different for each person. But we definitely feel that's the best way to be able to get to a point where we can help them more meaningfully. So yeah, please don't jump to conclusions that we're just enabling them to stay out on the street, because that is definitely not the end goal. All right, how are we doing?
We're doing great. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a couple things to talk about real quick. So as a business owner, there's two questions for me. If you're a business owner in town and you've got some issues outside your doorstep, or just you have issues, I guess the moral of the story is to contact you folks with those issues first, correct?
Sure. Absolutely.
And
there
then
are,
go ahead.
Either contacting us directly, of course, through the SLC mobile app if you're within Salt Lake. Of course, if it is an actual emergency, someone's in physical danger, there's a fire, something like that, 911. There is also the non-emergency number, 801-799-3000. And that one allows you to report to the police that there's an issue happening, or that you've seen that it's not an emergency, get to it when you can, but just need you to know about this. And then along those lines, there is also the online reporting tool, slcpd.com. And that one you can report, hey, my car was broken into last night. Obviously the criminal isn't here anymore, but I still need a case number. And we don't necessarily need to tie up an officer's time to drive out to you to take the report and physically write it down, when you could just type it in just as easily and get it done. You get your case number. And with that, we know then that it has been officially reported. Once that case number is issued, it makes the tallies on the statistics on CompStat, so that we can see those reports. And it's those reports that create the heat blooms, the hot spots. The more reports we get in a particular area for a particular issue, then we know what resources we need to devote to that area. Otherwise, if you are reaching out to the police and reporting something that may be happening in the moment, but has passed by the time an officer arrives, the officer can look around. I don't see or hear anything. No victim, no crime. Oh, well, no report either. And I can't necessarily blame them for not wanting to do the paperwork on something that they don't even have anything to report on. So oftentimes an online report can be more beneficial for us in the long term, so that the administration can see that there are issues of this type happening in this area, and we need to devote these resources. So hopefully that expanded on that answer a bit.
And oh, sorry, Bob, I put a few things in the chat, the online reporting tool that Dennis had mentioned, the non-emergency number, and also we have some great community liaison officers assigned to different districts around the city. So I put a link in the chat to which officer is which area, and they're a great resource to reach out to if you do have questions specifically about crime. Dennis and I can answer some, but they're more, obviously they're in it every day. And they can also offer some great suggestions as far as how to by environmental design, which I've learned, CEPTED, which I've learned a lot about from SLCPD, and just like how to put different lighting up and how to create a space around your business that committing crime. So that's they're a great resource for that. Sorry, Bob, I know you had another question. Go ahead.
No, the question is at the end of the day, there's a lot of different things going on, and I'm amazed at how much is going on. But as a business owner and me having 1,000 things going on, what are some ways that we can help, i.e. financial or time, that you think are the most impactful for a group of business owners who do want to help but have limited time, i.e. a resource to dole out?
All righty. We have implemented around the Geraldine King Resource Center at roughly 700 South and State Street. There is a neighboring business, the Sapa Group, great restaurant. So go get your sushi there, definitely. They have sponsored a bi-weekly cleanup team. So they offer up, here's 10 gift cards of, $10 each to Smith's, McDonald's, whatever, that they've donated to encourage residents of the resource center. So the ladies there come out and here's grabbers and a bucket and go around a few blocks and clean up the neighborhood, picking up trash. So something like that, a relatively minor investment, and then they team up with the employees from the business as well. And everybody gets to work together as neighbors, cleaning up their neighborhood. That has been fantastic. So would love to see more of that type of thing. There are always needs, certainly in resource centers, with as simple as serving meals. You can sign up often volunteering through the website, voaut.org. Because VOA has both the Women's Resource Center, the Youth Resource Center, we're serving, roughly 250 people a day, 3 meals a day. We need lots of people to help out. So serving meals, sorting donations, of course, any donations you have, whether it's physical goods or cash to help buy all the things that we've got to fill in those gaps with. We can certainly always appreciate that. Let's see, what else am I missing, Allison?
Yeah, there's also VOA manages the Women's Resource Center and the Youth Resource Center, but the Road Home also manages the Gail Miller Resource Center on Paramount Avenue. So you can always volunteer through them. Also with the resource fairs and kayak court that I had mentioned, we often are looking for community volunteers to help set up tents and tables. I'm hoping my computer's doing a circle, so I hope I'm not breaking up. As well as we are the last resource fair, the Salt Lake Buddhist Temple provided lunch that we were able to serve to the folks at the Resource Center, which is a great way to just break down some barriers. So if you may not be able to serve lunch, but would want to donate some meals to either kayak court or resource fairs, those would be appreciated. Or even sometimes at kayak court, if they're available, we'll give out just $5 McDonald's gift cards as a way to break the ice. So any gift cards like that also would be appreciated as far as issues go.
Yeah, there are. Sorry, I didn't mention the Road Home. I'm partial VOA, of course, but some businesses like Home Depot, Lowe's, Industrial Supply offer up construction materials so that we can either handle repairs within the center, so that we can get the trash grabbers and buckets, trash bags, all that kind of stuff, cleaning supplies, to be able to take an active role in cleaning the neighborhoods surrounding the resource centers.
Bottles of water.
Yeah, water bottles. So depending on what your business is and how we may be able to engage with you, we're certainly willing to talk to any of you and see if there's a way that we can help you plug into whatever your focus might be on how to help. So absolutely, let us brainstorm with you individually.
Okay, Bob, anything else that we should cover?
Oops, no, I just wanted to make sure that I think for me, when I was having my issues, the best contact was Allison and Dennis, but also those the community outreach officers. Those police officers are a very, very good resource, and they'll know your neighborhood and they'll know what's going on in your neighborhood. So I was impressed with that also, and then the ability to help out and where we can go to help and what we can do to help is always key.
Agreed. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yep.
Well, Dennis and Alice, thank you for all you do for the community, for the homeless, and for the businesses that are, struggling with some of these issues as well. It's having you there is just invaluable to the whole community. So we really, really appreciate everything that you guys do.
Absolutely. Thank you. And likewise, I mean, without everyone here's businesses, then our economy would definitely be suffering. So thank you guys much too for sticking it out every day.
And thank you too for your patience as we do try to find solutions that meet everyone's needs, because like Dennis pointed out, it's a very delicate balance that is often difficult to find. So thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think this has been a really good event. We will post this online for people who could not join during the actual event. We'll post this online at our website at utahindependentbusiness.org, and that video will be available probably later today. We'll have this video ready to go, and we'll post it online if that's okay with you, Dennis and Allison.
Absolutely.
Sure. And Doug, should we put our contact information in the chat, or are you going to email that to everybody?
Yeah, that would be great. We'll take a lot of the stuff that was dropped in the chat as well and make that available on the web page that accompanies the video, so everybody will be able to get that. So yeah, please do put your contact info in the chat there. Well, Bob, thanks for sharing your story. That was really interesting and helpful to hear the challenges you've had, and to know that there is a solution quite often, although it takes a little time to work through. Working with Dennis and Allison and their team, you were able to to get some resolution on it. And how has that been lately? Do you have any issues, Bob, at your place with encampments nearby, or what's the situation?
No, I know that they've moved over to by the tracks area, but that's also been cleaned up. But like I said, I think part of this was during COVID, it was insanity there for a little bit. And I really appreciate those folks, Allison and Dennis, coming in and helping as much as they could. I've seen a definite improvement over the last few months. Now, an improvement for me, just like they said, an improvement for me might not be an improvement for my neighbor down the road, right? Like the shell game continues. And so, you know, that's the ultimate question, is what can be done ultimately. More housing units. Obviously, I'm involved in the housing industry. I see it every day. Rents are going through the roof. People are in line to get a housing unit. And it leaves those folks that are less than able to, they're just out of the loop. They don't have a chance. And so we need more housing units. At the end of the day, you just need to build more housing units. That's it.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate you all for joining. And again, Dennis and Allison, thank you so much for all you do. And thank you again.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
All right. See you soon.
Utah Independent Business Coalition is a collaborative association of Utah's local small businesses. These independently owned enterprises include the small stores, cafes and restaurants, manufacturing, and professional services businesses that are at the heart of our community. Here are just a few businesses that are members of Utah Independent Business Coalition. These independently owned businesses lend a unique flavor and sense of place to our neighborhoods. Utah Independent Business Coalition provides advocacy, education, mentoring, and social connections for small business owners. Together, we're building a stronger, independent business community in Utah.